It is No Gifts, Please, the parenting podcast by the pair with no real gifts, but a whole lot of gumption. Hey everyone, I'm Steve Noviello.
And I'm Jenny Anchondo.
Back again, season 3. Now, we kind of teased in the first episode that we were going to be talking about some things this season that I frankly never thought we would be talking about, and today's the day.
Why didn't you think we would go here?
Well, honestly, because I think, so some of the feedback we got during seasons 1 and season 2 were, we love the podcast, we love the length, we love the topics, we love all the things. But I think that you and I tend to default to topics that are applicable to the age of our own children, and our kids are 18 months to 8 years.
Yeah,
so
they're growing up, though.
This particular topic, while it's a few exits up the road here, but they're quickly approaching.
And before we go any further, I will say a lot of these it's confusing because yes, this is a parenting semi-family friendly podcast. This wouldn't be one to listen to while your kid's in the car.
Yes.
Who knows where this is going to go, but I would just say, like, as a general rule, this is parent to parent vibes as opposed to chit chat while the kids are in the car seat.
Yes. So what are we talking about today? Well, I mean, fairly, we're talking about porn. So how's that for tease?
That made sure
we're talking about porn.
Was listening through, and more specifically, how to talk to your kids about porn. We want to know everything from which age to introduce it. Does it depend on gender? Does it depend on the type of lifestyle your family leads? All those sorts of things. So we said we need to find the best of the best when it comes to this. Well, we have
two of them.
So
do you want me to introduce first, or you want to introduce first?
I want to introduce first.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Mickey Johnson is a Texas board certified licensed clinical social worker with a master's of social work from Loyola University Chicago, 30 years of experience. So she has a private practice, really focuses on the treatment of teens and adults struggling with issues related to anxiety, depression, relationships across the lifespan, trauma, grief, etc. However, one of her biggest professional accomplishments, and this is why when we were searching through everybody available to us, when we found her Instagram and the areas she speaks in, it was really perfect for what we wanted to talk about: comprehensive human development and sexual health curriculum that she compiled more than a decade ago. And this is something many people have been talking about now. I feel like she was a little bit ahead of her time with this product. She made this to educate and foster growth and connection, often drawing from her own experience as the mother of 2 adult daughters. The curriculum really helps students to cultivate healthy relationships, supports parents in having age-appropriate, often difficult conversations around all topics related to sexual health, relationships, and adolescent development. And this was all spurred on by a conversation that you had with a friend. Okay,
so let me introduce I feel like we're doing like point counterpoint here. Like you have your expert, right? Whom by the way is a female. I've got my guy on my. So in this corner, we have Chris Edwards, who is none of those things that you just mentioned about Mickey, and whose ass I kicked at a dad's club pumpkin carving contest in kindergarten, and we became fast friends.
Yeah.
I mean, we were having sushi lunch a few weeks ago, and he said, I've got a topic for your podcast. I have a 12-year-old son. We're getting to that point of how do we, I think the phrase you used was, how do I introduce porn to my kid?
Yeah, it was close. I may have said it differently.
But it's an interesting topic because I will, and I'm actually curious, did your dad introduce this to you at all as a child, or not? It was kind of
absolutely not. No.
So mine did.
Okay.
And I know they listen, so my mom might not even know this.
Ooh.
But when I was probably around the same age as your son, one day I opened up my sock drawer and there was a Playboy magazine in it, and I didn't buy it.
And you consider that him having talked to you?
It was the 80s or the 90s. So yes, that was a deep conversation in the 90s. So it was such an awkward conversation to have that he slipped a magazine into my drawer, and then it became my responsibility to bring it up, which I think is parenting in the 90s really explained, right? What does our guest have to say?
Okay, Mickey.
Right.
But answer the big question. How do we talk to our kids about pornography?
So there's different ways to think about this, but I love the Playboy magazine example. I'm a child of the 70s and 80s, and so it was magazines. It was Playboy and Penthouse, right?
Yep.
So one of my kind of strict rules is talk early and talk often.
Okay.
Right. So if there's a foundation in the relationship with your child where you're able to have organic conversations about awkward or cringy, as they say, or difficult topics, then when like the really heavy stuff comes along, like we're talking about, we feel more prepared. Right. And so, but what we have to think about with pornography is that most sexual health conversations aren't really about sex, right? They're about relationships. It's about the body. And we have a body from the time we're born. So we can start having conversations about body confidence in an age appropriate way from a very early age. Okay. So when a lot of parents say, well, I don't want to bring up the topic, I don't know what to say, and we'll get to that.
And you tell them just put a magazine in the drawer.
Yeah, just put a magazine in the drawer. I always say it's not, when you're talking about it, you're not giving permission. You're not like saying, oh, let's watch porn, right?
That's the concern. That's why people don't want to talk about it. Yeah.
Exactly. So people shy away. And in truth, these conversations early and often start to build a foundation in a relationship between the parent and the child. And then the child begins to develop a confidence and a security, right? And it's more becomes about preparation and prevention instead of permission. Does that make sense?
So what we were kind of joked off the top here that generally Jenny and I kind of hijack our podcast for parenting information for ourselves. So if I'm hearing you correctly, my boys, who are 6 and 8, I actually should be. This is applicable here because those conversations to create that confidence and kind of take the ick out of it should be happening now. What are specifically those topics?
So in my curriculum, the foundation is healthy relationships. And I mean, we start talking about relationships with kids, right? Age appropriately from the time they learn how to share, right? From the time, if they have a sibling or when they go to school. And it's about, don't push Johnny. You wouldn't want him to do that to you. So you're teaching empathy without ever even using the word, right? You're teaching about safety. You're teaching about respect. You're teaching about consent. You're teaching about boundaries, right? So ask the question again.
Well, so I get that. We've had sex experts on the show before. We were talking about having the talk, and kind of the new philosophy is it's not a talk, it's a conversation. It's an age appropriate conversation that frankly has already started in our house. As my kids discover their body in the in the bathtub. I want to loop Chris in here because I know we joke around about the 70s and 80s and it was magazines and whatnot. Today, dads or families or whomever are faced with the fire hose of the internet.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's got to scare the crap out of you.
Yeah. Everything's equal. So it's,
What do you mean?
Well,
you search and it all comes
up.
It's all
search, right? Like it used to be, I have a brother who's 10 years older than me. So when I was little, like I found his stash of Playboys and whatever, and that was a thing. There wasn't an avenue for me to
go more hardcore about it.
Yeah, to come across like
there's so much access. It's so
right. And now it's just a little search bar. So it's like you could go into ChatGPT and just be like, what's the craziest thing I could search?
Right.
And you'll get it, and it'll take you somewhere, and you'll see something. And I think where my concern lies the most is that I'm a sex positive person. Our family's that way. Like we talk about it. We want to talk about consent. We want to talk about your feelings for yourself and feeling safe for yourself and all that stuff. But one of the things that we haven't talked about is like intimacy. And also I wanted to be somewhat prepared. Like I said to a friend the other day, like it would be totally normal if my son came up and was like, there's this kid at school. He's being a punk. How do I hurt him? And people would be like, okay, well, I can show you. And that'd be a thing. But if my son comes home and is like, there's this girl I'm interested in. How do I make her feel really good? I'm like, oh, that's weird.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about it.
Okay.
And, so I want to be able to answer the questions my kids have. I want them to feel safe asking them. But it's like,
where's the line?
Where does it get weird?
Because of consent
for sure.
and respect.
Where's it weird?
All right, Mickey.
Well, I think that the most important thing is not to be evasive, right? Be accessible to your child so that they know they can come to you. And clearly you have that relationship already in your, with your child and in your family. You've created that. All right. So when we're talking about kids, maybe 6 to 10 years old, the rules are different than when we're talking about preteens and older teens, right? So if your 12-year-old son came to you, or your 9-year-old children came to you, you first want to say, thank you for coming to me. I know this isn't easy, right? Mm-hmm. It's never about, and I want parents to understand this, it's never about having the perfect thing to say, right? Kids don't want their parents to be experts. They want them to be parents. They want them to be real with them and honest with them. And real, honest parents don't have all the answers. And what's more amazing for a kid than their parent to go, well, I don't know, or I need to check on that or look that up. So don't be worried about saying the wrong thing or saying too much or not knowing what to say, right? But if we're talking about kids, the scary thing is that exposure to pornography can happen around 9 years old.
Oh, God.
And I know that just floors people when they hear it.
Explain how. I mean, once you explain it, it's pretty simple to understand how that is happening, right?
Right. And so because of the internet and because everybody's got, not everybody, but the majority of people have computers in their home and iPads and, phones and all these things, it's right there for the taking.
Yeah.
So as parents, we want to kind of mentor instead of monitor. We don't want to keep all the information from them or take the devices. We want to teach them how to use it safely, right? Because they are going to be exposed. So say you have a child your age and he comes and he says, there's this girl I really like. Okay. So you can say, that's so awesome. I'm so glad you want to talk about this. Say, how'd you meet her? Open-ended conversation. Kind of hear what he's interested in, what direction he wants to go with it. And let him talk about his feelings. Are you nervous? Are you excited? Have you tried to talk to her? What happened? So engaged. It is okay to say relationships need to be healthy. And what your responsibility in a healthy relationship is the following. You can talk about consent and explain that in an age-appropriate way. Talk about boundaries, right, in an age-appropriate way. And kind of start to have conversations about healthy and unhealthy relationships, right? What that looks like. He doesn't ever want to be forceful. He wants to be respectful. He wants to be courteous, right? When you want to get into the conversation about pornography or intimacy specifically, you can, by definition, just say that pornography, there's things on the internet that are meant for adults, but a lot of kids can see them, right? Or have access to it. So pornography, and ask him, do you know what that is? Have you ever heard the word? Sometimes people call it porn. Have you ever heard that? See what they know. I promise you, they know a lot more than we think they do. And that's kind of scary, but they're getting their sex ed on the playground, right? And from talking to their friends and hanging out. So ask him what he knows, what he's heard, and then say that these pictures and videos are really not made for kids, all right? And it doesn't show what real love and real intimacy and healthy relationships look like in real life. So you're giving a definition, but you're also inserting your values and coming at it from a shame-free, non-judgmental, non-harsh way.
Mm-hmm. Is there a rule? Rule is the wrong word here, but my question is who makes the first move here, right? Do I go to my child and say, hey, you're about 12 or 13. Mm-hmm. This is probably going to come up. Let's have a conversation about it. Or am I waiting for my kid to come to me?
Both scenarios are so natural and either can happen. Right?
Is there an age by which if they haven't come to me, I need to go ahead and get over myself and sit them down?
I like to think that should happen around 11 or 12.
Oh,
and
God.
You know your child best, though. So there's no hard and fast age number, right? So you're going to know based on where are they in terms of liking somebody in a
having
special
a little
way,
bit of
more
a
than
crush,
friend.
or maybe
Right. Like
a
they're gonna-
boyfriend or girlfriend kind
Exactly.
of thing.
And how much do they talk about sexuality or gender? You're going to know your child, and you're going to know, wow, okay, it's time for us to talk about this, right? And you can say, there's something I've been wanting to talk to you about, and it's going to be kind of awkward, okay? But I really want you to know that this is an important conversation that I'd like to have. You can introduce it that way.
Do you surround it around phone, tablet, computer safety, or are you surrounding it around conversations and things that they may hear outside of that?
It can be either or. And like some examples I like to give are, we have these teachable moments, right? Where a child might, for example, see a nude cartoon or a nude drawing, right? That could happen in a museum, or it can happen in a book, that you have in your home, right? It could be art.
Yeah.
Right?
Loteria, the old Loteria Mexican bingo game had naked people in it. So that's where it came up in our household.
We had a book in our basement that was on a very high shelf called Where Did I Come From?
Okay, see?
Okay, no, this
When you got tall enough, you found out.
Like, what's with my family and hidden literature?
Okay, hidden literature. I'm going to say bring those books down. Bring the books down to the lower shelves. And books are an amazing resource. And I'm actually just uploaded a whole resource list on my website.
Okay.
Because books are a great way to introduce it. So if you're wanting to just have a body positive conversation, okay, at a younger age, these books are awesome, right? And it kind of introduces it, talks about the body and the function of the body. And so it's not really about sex, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just about our body. And so we start to feel less awkward about it. We always want to use, and I know this is hard for people, and I have a great lesson in my curriculum about it, but we always want to use anatomically correct language.
Yeah.
No nicknames.
I've heard that's good for acknowledgement of potential abuse or things like that too.
Yeah, it's a lot about safety. There are statistics that show that children who know the anatomically correct name for their body parts are less likely to be sexually assaulted or to be prey, right? Or groomed, and they also know if somebody's talking about those body parts, then it's a conversation about safety. Who's okay to touch my body and in what way? And that can be a hug from a friend, or it can be something more along the lines of if you're at the doctor's office, right? I feel like we're often all of these.
No, that's good. I mean, it's kind of like it's all part of it.
Well, it is. It's definitely multifaceted. But the one thing that I am hearing is that I feel like we're all making it more difficult and scarier than it actually needs to be.
That's absolutely right.
Well, even right now,
that's exactly the problem.
We're using words like safety and protection and all that stuff. And that gets lumped in a lot. And I think it's sort of like, I don't know, growing up with a pool.
Yeah.
It's like,
exactly.
Don't go around the pool. You'll die. Pools are a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of
great. That's
such a good analogy.
How could it be both?
That.
Yeah. And so, I don't know. I worry about, I think maybe I was in like 6th grade when we had the
assembly.
The guy came to tell us about how sex is bad and dangerous and all that stuff. And even then I was like, what are you talking? Like, we're all here. Like this is how we all got here. Like, what are you talking about? And like, I don't want to do that to my kid. Like, it's not something to be afraid of. That's across the board in our house. Like, my daughter, super adventurous, wants to jump off the roof. I'm like, there's a safe way to do this. You just got to slow down and we can think it through. Well,
but it's interesting that you mentioned that. We were talking not too long ago about how horrifically poorly the results of the DARE program ended up being, right? Like, you had all these people dare to keep your kids out drugged, coming into schools, telling them about how terrible this is, and that 9 times out of 10, these kids were leaving the assemblies and going out to the schoolyard and trying all of the things that people just told them to, because there is kind of a disconnect of, and I think that as a parent sometimes, Like I'm here thinking like, what filters do I need for my computer? How do I keep my children away from anything? I mean,
The pool fence.
the pool.
You're buying a pool
right,
fence.
I'm a
mentally.
pool fence guy, and I would rather honestly take Chris's approach here, which is, listen, we have a pool. We may not always have a fence, and even if we do have one, I'm not always going to be around to make sure that that gate is locked. So how do I arm my kids in a, very matter of fact way to make sure that they can kind of be
Swim.
safe that they can swim, right?
You're making two great points. And the first one is preparing them by giving them the information that they need. The scare tactics don't work, right? It breeds shame, and it makes children feel like there's something wrong with their body. And secondly, it's okay to be curious. We all have bodies, right? And every part of our body has a function. I always say to kids, every part of our body has a function except our appendix, right? We could just get rid of that and we're still fine, right? And it even sometimes works against us. So we want to be shame-free. We don't want to use scare tactics. We want to be clear. We want to be direct. And we want to give them the information that they need so that when they get ready to swim, they know what they need in order to keep themselves safe.
So what's the juxtaposition between this is you had a great sentence that I think that we can all probably use, which is that there is some information on the internet that is meant for adults. You might come across it, you might see it, right?
Right.
So there's that. So then if they do see it and then somebody feels like, I really enjoyed watching that. So I think there's like a juxtaposition between teaching people about respecting their bodies and honoring their bodies and what an actual relationship looks like. And that's not it. But then there's also, you talked about preventing shame in somebody who watches it and enjoys it. So what do we do there?
It's important to tell children. And we were talking earlier about, do we approach it or do we let it be organic? Or with a situation like this where they've seen something, right? If the relationship is there, they will know that they can say, I saw this, right? I saw a man touching a woman, or I saw two men touching each other, right? And the best thing we can say as parents is, tell me how you felt when you saw that. Like, I'm not mad at you. I am so glad that you're coming to me with this, right? Sometimes we see things and they confuse us, right? Or we don't really understand. And then to be able to have the conversation with open-ended questions again, right? Where you're asking how you felt about something and then telling them it's okay, whatever they felt. Sex is pleasurable. It should be enjoyable, right? Which is why pornography can be really confusing, because sometimes it can be violent. There can be these gender stereotypes where there's a dominance or a submissiveness. And so maybe a child is scared. So we want to ask.
That would be understandable.
It would be understandable, right? And so we want to ask them if they saw something, thank them for coming to you, ask them how it felt, and validate whatever they tell you they feel. And give them permission to know that it's not wrong or bad to find pleasure in seeing it, but it's not the appropriate way to get sexual health education, and that it doesn't always give us accurate information about what healthy intimacy looks like.
I think that, like, I know for me, a fear that I have, and maybe Chris shares this as a dad, is that in my mind, because again, I was limited to a print copy of like an entry level magazine, right? And then
plus the body book.
You can step plus that cartoon
that was
book
way up there.
that was a high shelf. That was a high shelf. And so you kind of you could step it up. In my mind, my fear is that my child is going to turn on the internet and immediately go to like the darkest corners of the hardest core, pornography, and be like just sucked into this world. But is the reality that most healthy children are going to see that and kind of recoil from it, as opposed to, at that age, as opposed to be like, oh yes, like harder, longer, faster, crazier, raunchier. I mean, what should my expectation be as a parent in terms of trying to assuage some of that fear that I have?
I don't think that most healthy children seek out pornography at an early age, right? Just dive in.
Right.
Doesn't usually happen that way. It usually happens on accident, quite honestly. Now, of course, there are always those situations where they heard something on the playground or they were hanging out with a friend and they were embarrassed that they didn't know what it was. So they sneak home and they Google it.
Or worse, on a school computer, and then the parents find out through their filters, right?
Mm-hmm. And then
that's a
they
big
can
deal.
get suspended, and it's a huge deal. So if we have conversations before these things happen, again, we're back to prevention, where it's like, if you see something on the internet, come and tell me. You're not going to be in trouble. I'm not going to be mad at you. And as parents, we can take precautions, right? We can set up certain parental controls in order to try and prevent exposure. But again, if there is exposure, whether they're seeking it or it's accidental, you want to be able, I want to reassure you that they're not diving deep like immediately. They're not just going to go in and go for raunchy, hardcore porn right off the bat.
I think you make some great points, and kind of one of them that I'd like to talk more about is kind of parental controls. I also know Chris brought some questions with him. Let's stick around for another episode. Let's call it quits for now. And we'll take a little bit of a break and regroup and come back again, because I think there's kind of a part 2 to this conversation. So as always, we invite you to click subscribe and like, and please give us feedback to continue to let us know the topics that you want to hear about. A new podcast episode every Tuesday morning. And if you do nothing else today, go find yourself a friend you don't need to clean the house for. We'll see you next time.